Good evening and welcome to this live stream virtual town hall with your state lawmakers, Senator Marko Liias, Representative Lillian Ortiz-Self, and Representative Strom Peterson. My name is Andy and I'm going to be your off-camera moderator for the evening. Tonight's event is an opportunity for you to ask your state lawmakers questions you have about the 2021 legislative session. We sent out a survey earlier this week and asked residents of the 21st Legislative District what questions they had for their lawmakers. We have compiled those questions for you tonight, and your lawmakers are here to respond to them. You can submit your questions as we go through the live stream event tonight by submitting a comment in the live stream on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or wherever you're live streaming this event. And with that, we'll get started. I will turn it over to Senator Liias for some opening remarks.
Thanks so much, Andy, and thanks to everyone for joining us. We're also excited to have one of our Congress people from the 21st District, Representative Jayapal, with us tonight. So thanks for joining us, Congresswoman. This is, really a pivotal session for our state and for our communities. And the Senate, our focus is on three top priorities. The first is defeating COVID-19 and getting our state back on the path to health. Second, to help with tremendous economic dislocation by getting as much relief to as many Washington families as possible. Really proud of the $4 billion in relief that our state legislature has already approved this session. Excited to partner with the Congresswoman to get even more help to struggling families. And then the third issue is to really address the deep and persistent inequities that exist in our state. We know, and COVID-19 has shown us, that our health systems don't treat all Washingtonians equally. We need to make sure that all Washingtonians have access to the care they need. We know our housing systems, our educational systems, our economy aren't fair and equitable, and we look forward to passing strong police accountability, reforms to our health and economic and education systems. Those are our top three priorities this session, but there's a lot of other issues we've got to address as well. Look forward to the discussion, and I will pass it off to my favorite state representative, Lillian Ortiz-Self.
Thank you, Senator Liias. In the House, we have the same priorities. We are really focusing, obviously, on healthcare, economic recovery, equity across our state, and climate change. Those are the four priorities we have asked every one of our members to really buckle down on and look at. And of course, equity includes the police accountability and training issues that we have going on in our state right now. So we are focused on those. And like Senator Liias said, there's many others. A lot of them fall under these areas. And we are prioritizing them so we can see our state continue to bounce forward. And now my favorite representative, Strom Peterson.
Thank you, Lillian. Thank you, Marko. Always proud to be the second best state representative from the 21st District. Strom Peterson, very happy to be here. Congresswoman Jayapal, thank you so much for joining us. Just echoing what my seatmates have said, so proud to serve with these two in the legislature. We've been a team since I've been down there, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn where I think we're the strongest delegation in Olympia. We work together, we enjoy each other's company, and we all are kind of different subject matter experts. So hopefully we can answer all of your questions tonight as they come through, but rest assured that although we're in this weird virtual world and not coming to you live from Olympia, we're putting in the work. And we found that in this weird virtual session that sometimes it's actually easier to connect with people back at home and easier to connect with people across the state. So we're taking advantage where we can, but we're making do, getting lots of work done now in whatever day we're in. As COVID goes, you never really know what day of the week it is, never mind what day of session. But just incredibly proud of the work that we've gotten done to date, and so much more to go in the next couple of months. So with that, I think Congresswoman Jayapal, again, thank you so much for making the time out of an incredibly busy schedule.
Well, thank you all so much. It is really an honor to be with State Senator Liias, with Representative Ortiz-Self, with Representative Peterson. You are a phenomenal group of legislators representing the 21st. And I'm not going to get into any trouble with other legislators by saying who's my favorite and who's not, but I can just say that this is an exceptional team. So thank you for letting me just take a few minutes to tell you what is happening in the 7th Congressional District, which I'm so proud to serve. as the representative for, but in the House of Representatives. As you've seen, it's been a very busy few weeks in Washington, D.C. We began the 117th Congress. We inaugurated President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, and we just finished the second impeachment of Donald Trump after he incited the deadliest and most destructive attack on the United States Capitol since the War of 1812. Following the House's bipartisan vote to impeach, each Republican senator had a choice to make: protecting America and upholding their oath to this country and our Constitution, or staying with a one-man cult. And unfortunately, 43 Republican senators did not hold Donald Trump accountable. But I just have to say, I'm so proud of the Republican senators that did vote to convict, and the Democrats. This was the most bipartisan impeachment in the history of our country. And we are going to continue to do all we can to make sure that no president ever again in the future incites insurrection, and that no president does the kinds of things that we saw happening. Now, in terms of our priorities going forward, we have the same priorities. We are focused on this COVID relief package that is before us right now. As this crisis has continued, our health and economic crisis, we know that millions of families are experiencing devastation from the ongoing pandemic. And that's why I've been very proud to fight for a very robust aid package with the priorities of the 7th. Really embedded in there. I was able to help on behalf of the Progressive Caucus secure both the $15 minimum wage in the package and the threshold of survival checks to be the same as they were last time around. The package also includes enhanced unemployment assistance, which is very, very important to people across our district and across the state. So the package includes the December package included $600 survival checks. This package will include an additional $1,400 in survival checks, including for children, and it will include making mixed status families eligible. It will continue an additional $400 of expanded unemployment assistance. There is additional rental assistance, both for rental assistance, but also for homelessness specifically, as well as a very important child tax credit that will bring money to and lift millions of children out of poverty. It also includes more additional support for small businesses in our community, which is very, very critical. So this package now is going through the process of committees, and it will go to the floor, we believe, next week. I just want to say just a few words about the minimum wage increase, which we were able to secure. And obviously, a lot depends on what happens in the Senate. But the federal minimum wage hasn't increased 1 cent over the last decade. And by increasing the minimum wage to $15 across the country, we will give 30 million workers a raise and lift nearly 1 million people out of poverty. And because I know the issues of equity are so important, I will just say that 25% of minimum wage workers that will get a raise are Black and 30% are Latinx. And so this is a critically important racial justice policy. And then, I think right after we get through this package, we will bring the second Build Back Better package to the floor, which is also extremely important to invest in our infrastructure, not only our roads and our bridges, but our internet, our schools, our water systems, but also our families' infrastructure to make sure that we're really building up our care economy and doing all of the things that we need to do to take care of our families. So there's a lot happening. We will also be bringing a number of key bills back to the floor that already passed in the last session. That will include the Equality Act, which we will get passed in a couple of weeks off the floor. And we just passed the Apprenticeship Act. We will take on a bunch of immigration bills, including President Biden's Day One immigration bill, and HR 6, which was the Dream and Promise Act. So there's a lot happening, and I'm just really pleased to be able to share a little bit of that with you all and to join your fantastic state representatives and state senator here for a few minutes.
Congresswoman, I know we got a lot of questions about vaccination, and I know that President Biden really arrived to find the cupboard bare when he took office. Can you give us any sense of how vaccination efforts, I know it's included in the relief packages for our constituents here in the 21st and in the 7th, what's the prospect to get access to vaccines?
Well, there's already been an incredible increase in the number of vaccines that President Biden and the administration have been able to secure. So that is already a substantial increase. But the reality, Marko, Senator Liias, is that, the challenge here is that we had such a backlog because nothing was being done to develop the systems that we needed to distribute the vaccines. We weren't giving enough money to state and local governments to be able to also put their distribution plans in place. So I think the plan is that we will be able to ensure, hopefully, that everyone is vaccinated no later than the end of the year. But by July, we should have enough vaccines to really get to a scale that I think we would want to see in our communities. I have been on a weekly call with the governor and our delegation, our congressional delegation, talking about vaccine distribution, the different ways in which we need to prioritize different communities, making sure that we're addressing the disproportionality. And Representative Del Bene and I led a letter about making sure that we ban preferential access to vaccines because of what we saw happening with some of our hospital systems here in the region. So we're hoping to make that a priority as well, so that there's guidance from the administration. Two other things to mention: they have increased the number of vaccines that are being distributed through community health centers. Very, very important. And they are also now using pharmacy chains, which should also help distribute the vaccine. So all of that, I think, is a good sign. But we are behind, as you know, and doing everything we can to catch up to the severity and the scale of the virus.
Congresswoman Jayapal, the other question we get a lot of has to do with student loans. Can you speak a little bit about the possibility of seeing some relief in that area?
Yes, thank you for the question. Very, very important. It is one of our top priorities. And in fact, the Congressional Progressive Caucus released our legislative priorities list for the first 6 months of the year, and you will see that that is a big priority. So we have been working with Senator Warren, Senator Schumer, and then also with the White House directly. The White House is in the process right now of evaluating and getting their Office of Legal Counsel to evaluate their ability to cancel up to $50,000 in student loan debt through executive order. The president has been clear that he would prefer to see it done through Congress. Of course, all of us would. I am the co-sponsor of a bill to completely cancel all student debt, because there are lots of studies that show the economic impact that would have, positive economic impact that would have. And we should be clear that when we think about student debt, it's not just young people who hold that student debt. The fastest growing demographic of people with student debt is seniors who are on fixed incomes, trying to pay back their kids or their grandkids, or in some cases, their own student debt. So this is a policy that would benefit everybody. I think that our hope is to get at least $10,000 of cancellation quickly. But we are really working with the administration to help the president come to our view, which is that he has full authority to cancel up to $50,000 of student debt, and that it would be a tremendous boon. So hopefully we'll see some movement on that in the next package.
Thank you for that. Any other questions from our delegation?
Because I just want to thank you when you talked about the package that you're working on and the breakneck speed in which you're doing it. You mentioned rental assistance. That's something that we've been working on very closely. I know that Marko just had, I'll just call him Marko. I know he just had a bill in that Ways and Means Committee dealing with rental assistance, something that we're working on. But I also know that there's money in there for especially our local governments, for our cities and counties, for our local arts organizations that are supported by cities. I don't know if you can touch on that a little bit, but I know that's another big thing we've been hearing from our friends in city government.
Yeah, that's a really huge issue. The Republicans have been fighting us, unfortunately, every step of the way in terms of state and local government funding, which is so essential, right, to do any of the things that we're needing to do. And people sometimes forget that the 7th Congressional District includes 7 cities and the country of Vashon, as I like to say. So Edmonds is very squarely in my district, and we've been corresponding directly with the city of Edmonds and all of the mayors just to hear what's going on. And the work that local cities are having to do in this moment of responding to all of constituents' needs is just remarkable. And often they're having to lay people off. Now, if we had passed my Paycheck Recovery Act, which I introduced last April, that wouldn't have happened, but we weren't able to pass that. So we're in the situation we're in. And we will make sure that this package does contain significant funding for state and local governments. The December package did include quite a bit for state governments through transportation assistance and other ways, but this one will have money that can flow down to the local governments as well. So critically important. And that will also, through the additional PPP loans and monies, that will also help the arts organizations, the civic organizations, but we're going to have to do more. And we are bringing back the process this year of community-based projects, being able to get funding for specific district-based projects that each of us will be able to put forward. It's going to have to move pretty quickly, but over the next 2 to 3 weeks, my staff is putting together a list of those community-based projects, as well as some big transportation infrastructure projects like the West Seattle Bridge, for example, where we could get some targeted funds to those projects. So hopefully that will be another opportunity for us to bring money back to the district in a very focused way with community-supported projects.
Well, Congresswoman, thank you so much. We're so lucky to have the chair of the Progressive Caucus representing us in Washington, D.C. And we know that you yourself have battled COVID-19. You've been in our thoughts. We're glad to see you hearty and strong. I had no doubt that COVID-19 had met its match when it met Pramila Jayapal. So I'm glad you're doing well. And we are so grateful for you and your team, and send all our support. And we look forward to partnering on all these issues from Edmonds all the way up to Washington, D.C. In partnership to make things better for folks here in our communities.
Thank you all so much. And thank you for the spectacular work you do on behalf of the people every single day. I so appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
thank you for joining us. Alrighty, if you are just tuning in, this is a live virtual town hall with your lawmakers, Senator Marko Liias, Representative Lillian Ortiz-Self, and Representative Strom Peterson. We are going to go to questions now that folks have submitted ahead of time. First one we have is a question from Christine. With some of us being furloughed since last June, I noticed that my unemployment insurance will most likely run out in July of this year. I expect to be furloughed at that time. What is Washington State doing about extending benefits until 2022?
Well, I will just start by saying we just recently passed an unemployment reform bill that will ensure that all Washingtonians' minimum benefits are increased, and that we are providing certainty to our small businesses around the impacts and costs of unemployment. The length of benefits is really in partnership with the federal government. So that's why it was so important to have Congresswoman Jayapal with us. The Congress is taking action here in the next 2 weeks to extend unemployment benefits, and our Employment Security Department is going to be ready to keep those benefits flowing. We're also having really honest conversations about who qualifies for unemployment. We know that gig workers and others haven't always had access, so we're looking at exactly who qualifies, and we know that the wait times and the process of navigating Employment Security Department's website has been, candidly unacceptable. And so working on making sure that folks get answers more quickly as they need relief and benefits. So we're kind of looking at all these pieces together, but really appreciate that reminder that there are a lot of people in our community that are dependent on unemployment benefits continuing. We also want to get the economy going, which is why we passed $2.2 billion in economic relief so that businesses can begin hiring again. We can get the economy restarted so folks can get back to work. But that's a really critical issue. Strom, I know that you're leading efforts on housing and some human services. I don't know if you want to chime in with what else we're doing.
Sure, and I think one of the other key components of legislation that we're looking at regarding unemployment benefits, and Marko kind of touched on that as to who is eligible, is, those folks that have to choose to leave a job, maybe to take care of a relative who's sick. There's kind of some gray area there that if you choose to leave a job, traditionally you're not eligible for unemployment. Well, we're looking at changing that because things have just changed so drastically. We don't want to force people to go to work when their time and really kind of heart and soul could be better spent caring for a loved one. So just one of the other things that we're looking at in the human services area, we're looking to change a lot of the money that we get out for some of the basic needs. And these are some of the folks that are really, really desperate for money. And we really need to update those. Some of the formulas haven't been updated since 1991, I think. So we have a bill that's an early action bill. Again, a lot of the stuff we're doing this year is early action, which normally doesn't happen in the legislative session. We don't have this much activity going this quickly, but obviously we are in extreme times right now. So we want to make sure that we're updating those formulas so the really neediest families among us can get a few more dollars in their pocket to really help navigate this crazy world in which we find ourselves. So a lot of things happening on a lot of levels and happening quickly.
Great, thank you for that question. Next, we are going to go to a question submitted by Brad. Speaking of vaccines, why is Snohomish County so far behind in COVID vaccine doses received from the state and administered on a per capita basis, so far lower than our neighboring counties? Why is Snohomish County being singled out for shorting when we're one of the most important economically to a state recovery? And what are you doing about bringing more doses to your constituents?
Well, I will just say I checked coronavirus or .wa.gov just before our meeting, and the state overall's vaccinated about 12% of folks so far, and Snohomish County was at 11%. So we are a teeny bit behind, but we're fairly close to that statewide average. We have obviously a lot more work to do, and that's why I was glad to elevate that question to Congresswoman Jayapal to get her perspective too. It's good to hear that the federal government is getting us more doses. I don't know, Strom or Lillian, what you're seeing on this.
Well, and that is something that we in the House have been dealing with in leadership. We've been having meetings with the Department of Health and making sure that we look at kind of like what Congresswoman Jayapal said, just looking at how do we disseminate the vaccines to make sure we're doing it in a variety of settings. That everyone has equal access to it. That is not necessarily the case right now. And so we're looking at how do we get the vaccine out in a way that's equitable to everybody. And that includes using our pharmacies, et cetera. But and we're looking at how do we start to disseminate the vaccines in neighborhoods? How do we start getting them into various neighborhoods as opposed to one big mass center where people who are working have to drive quite a distance, have to leave work and drive quite a distance to get it. So we're looking at a variety of things. We continue with this ongoing conversation with the Department of Health.
And I'll just take any opportunity to give kind of a special shout out to our Snohomish County Health Department. We saw the first COVID case in the nation, and the work that they have done, always unfortunately on a shoestring budget, and still doing all the other work that our local health departments do. So they've been in constant contact with us regarding moving forward with vaccines, and again, as well as all the other work that they're doing, dealing with the opioid crisis that's still raging in our communities and here in Snohomish County. So always want to take an opportunity to thank them for the work that they've put in, especially here in the last 10 or 11 months.
And we are really looking at this long term as well. So, part of the problem was we started with a poor public health infrastructure. It was underfunded. And we want to strengthen it and make sure that our public health is stronger coming out of this, and that should any of this ever happen again, we're never caught as behind as we were to begin with. And I want to assure you that not just us three, but your whole Snohomish County delegation, we elevate the importance of Snohomish County every single chance that we get. We have the aerospace industry here. We have so many small businesses. We are a thriving port. We have a lot to offer, and we make sure that they know that every chance we get.
Yeah, and just a reminder, if you're interested in learning more about vaccine information, there's information on the Department of Health's website at doh.wa.gov. There's also an 800 number you can call here, 1-800-525-0127 if you're interested in getting a vaccine. Next, we're going to go to a question about landlords. This question is from Gloria. I'm a landlord with 4 rental units and a trustee for 5 rental units in the central area of Seattle. Some of the tenants are not paying rent. How do I register to obtain funds for the rents that are not being paid?
Great. Thank you, Gloria. And those are issues that are going through the committee that I'm fortunate to chair. And it's actually a brand new committee to the House that is specifically about housing, human services, and veterans. We knew this is such a crucial issue always, but especially this year, that we created a committee to really focus on that. We did send out, as Marko mentioned, one of our early action bills was to send out a couple of $1 billion in relief for business relief. And some of that is relief for landlords like yourself that have many times graciously helped their tenants, knowing what dire straits that they're in. Of course, we have the eviction moratorium, but rest assured that we're working on legislation right now to make sure that landlords have great access to this legislation. And especially, it sounds like landlords like yourself, Gloria, that have just a few properties. And this is really part of whether it's your retirement or your regular income. We want to make sure that all landlords are getting paid back, and that these tenants can then move on with their lives and hopefully get their job back, hopefully get back on their feet, and continue the strong relationships that landlords and tenants have. So we are currently working on, like I said, a handful of bills that deal with all sorts of areas around landlords and tenants and how we can strengthen those relationships. And like you said, really what it comes down to it is making sure that we can get the money back into the system. Again, to reference back to Congresswoman Jayapal, rental assistance is going to be a big part of the federal package, which we know that you will need, and that money will come out of the state. And also check with, I think you said your rentals were in Seattle, so you want to check with some of your county partners, because we're funneling the money often not only through the Department of Commerce, but sometimes you can access some of that money through county means as well. So a few different things, and I can get you some more specifics if you want to email my office, and we can make sure that we hook you up to the right specific website or the right phone number if we can't get that up tonight.
It is also worth noting that the State Department of Commerce is administering some of those funds, and you see on the screen there, if you go to commerce.wa.gov, you can access that. And of course, I also want to highlight the great work that our city governments are doing. The City of Edmonds has the Human Services Coordinator, Mindy Woods, who's doing incredible work, and of course, our other cities are leading here as well. So there should be help and assistance and resources at the city, county, and state level. But commerce.wa.gov is a good place to get connected to some of those new resources that are just coming out right now.
Great, thank you for that question. Next, we are going to go to a question. We got a few questions on this one, actually. So I'm going to pull up a comment, I believe is coming in from YouTube from Shelley about the homestead exemption. Senator Liias, can you speak to the support of Senate Bill 5408 on a bipartisan basis to change the homestead exemption? And will Representative Peterson and Ortiz-Self support the bill if it gets to the House?
Yeah, the homestead exemption speaks to kind of the ability to, for folks who own a home, what portion of it is taxed, and then exactly what does it look like if you're going through a bankruptcy process, and making sure that folks can hold on to their homes through that process. My own family, when our business had to close in the last recession, our business went bankrupt. So this homestead exemption was really critical for my folks being able to hang on to their home. The bill that you referenced would adjust some of those thresholds to where costs are at in the economy now, make sure that as housing prices have gone up, that people can better hold on to their homes, even if they have to go through a very difficult bankruptcy process. Just checking the joy of multiple screens as I just am checking the status of that bill, and it's been passed to the Senate Rules Committee. So we will definitely be looking at that for potential Senate action. And we've got about 2 more weeks for bills to leave the Senate to get over to the House of Representatives. And definitely want to make sure that, especially as times are tough and more businesses are forced to close because of what we're going through, that if folks have to go through that bankruptcy process, they can hold on to their home, because that is critical to not creating more of a homelessness and human service challenge out there if we can keep people safely in their homes even through this really tough economic time. Thanks for asking the question, and I'll certainly be keeping my eye on it, and definitely want to leave space for Strom and Lillian to jump in too.
I'm looking forward to seeing it in the House.
Yeah, likewise. And I think this bill has been introduced in the past, and I've supported it. Back in the olden days where often we'd have a House bill and a Senate bill. And just kind of on that point that Senator Liias made, we are also doing a lot of work around foreclosures and really trying to stem that tide from kind of reaching our shores, giving people more support when it comes to foreclosure actions, giving them more tools so they can work with their banks and work with lenders to make sure that they're not foreclosed upon, much in the same way that we're working with landlords and tenants.
Great. Thank you for those responses. Again, if you're just joining us, this is a live virtual town hall with your state senator, Senator Marko Liias, and representatives, who is Representative Lillian Ortiz-Self and Representative Strom Peterson. If you have a question for any of your lawmakers tonight, just go ahead and put those in the comments section, and we'll try to get to them as soon as we can. Next, we have a question that was submitted from Linda about taxes. We have the highest estate tax in the country. Why is that? The amount taxed keeps heading downward. You want to talk a few minutes about the estate tax in Washington State?
Well, it's a good question. I want to zoom out and just say that our state actually has the most upside down tax code in the country. Here in Washington, unfortunately, those who are at the bottom of the economy that earn the least pay the highest share of their income to taxes. For a low-income Washingtonian, they may pay as much as 18 cents on every dollar that they earn to state and local taxes, whereas those at the very top, the very wealthiest, are paying 1 to 2 cents on every dollar that they earn. So we've got to turn that upside down. The estate tax here at the state level was approved by voters, and it is part of our tax system. It's one of the few that is progressive. So those who are high income pay it, and then those that are middle class are exempt from it. I checked into this because I saw this question come through, and it turns out we don't have the highest estate tax in the country. There's about, I think about half the states have estate taxes, and our rates and our thresholds for when you have to pay are, equivalent to some of the other states that are out there. But it does really drive to that question around how do we make sure that the wealthiest few in our state are contributing, and what can we do to relieve that 18 cents on the dollar tax burden on low-income Washingtonians. I know Representative Peterson, Representative Ortiz-Self, we're all working on this, but I wonder what you're doing in the House at the present moment to try and turn our tax system right side up.
In the House, we have seen two bills that continue to move, and that's the capital gains tax and the wealth tax. The wealth tax, if you make under $1 billion or over $1 billion, you're going to see an increase. And then our capital tax, I'll let Representative Peterson talk a little bit about that. But those are the two that are moving right now, that in an attempt to try to turn that tax system upside down.
Right, and that's really what we're looking at is how do we even this playing field out. As far as the capital gains tax goes, that's really a tax when you sell a stock. Say you were one of those people that got into GameStop early and made a whole bunch of money. When you sell that, we're asking that there might be a small tax on the sale of that. If you own a second home and you sell that because property taxes are through the roof and you've made a bunch of money off the sale of a second home, we're asking that maybe you pay a little bit of tax on that. And again, that's going to go to fund, and what's also exciting about the capital gains tax proposal this year is really focusing a lot of that money into childcare. And we know historically that all the research has shown that one of the biggest impediments for many working families to either getting a better job, working more hours, this is especially true for women workers, is the lack of access to childcare. So we want to target some of that money that's coming out of this capital gains tax to childcare for working families across the state. And we know that when those families can get quality childcare and then they can go to work, they're going to boost our economy. And so we're going to grow the economy that way. So that's one of the many things that I'm excited about with this new tax proposal. And then I just want to give again kudos to so many people in both the House and the Senate and both caucuses that literally over the last couple of years have traveled the state doing town halls, talking to folks, everyday people like you and me about what they consider to be a fair tax system for the state of Washington. And they've come back to the legislature with a lot of information from every corner of this state about how we can better represent our values in our tax system. So big congratulations to the incredible amount of work that was done there. And now we're taking that information and we think turning it into smart tax policy that can grow our economy.
Excellent. Thank you for that question and for those answers. We have received a number of questions from folks online about vaccines for educators. In fact, one of those questions came in as a voicemail to your offices. So I'm going to play that now for you so you can hear directly from Luther, and then I'll come back to you for your answer.
Hello, my name is Luther. I live in Everett, and I'm interested in finding out how we can get a more dependable distribution of coronavirus vaccines. I work for the public schools, and we're getting ready to open up to children now in Everett, and to be in that environment, I know that a number of my colleagues and myself have some concerns because it will take some time before the vaccine will be effective in people who get it, as well as it could be delayed further by inefficient logistics. Much interest in what you're doing. Thank you for your standing up for our community, and I hope to tune in tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Got word from some folks that might have been a little too quiet on your end, so I apologize for that. But basically, Luther was asking about specifically about getting vaccines for school employees, particularly in this.
Well, thanks, Luther, for that question. It's worth noting that we are right now in the phase where we're focused on folks over 65 in our state. About 90% of the fatalities from COVID-19 have been in folks over 60. So we really want to focus in on the folks most at risk. But the next phase of eligibility is teachers and other frontline workers that are under 65, because we know that we got to protect the folks who are asked to be out there in public right now working. So those are the highest priorities, and really proud of the work that our local public schools are doing. And Lillian, I know you serve on the education committee. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about what we can do to help our schools reopen safely.
Yes, and one of the things that I wanted to say in regards to getting the vaccines to educators is that in that next phase, it came out that the recommendation was that educators over the age of 50 would get vaccinated, and we pushed back and said, how do we tell an educator who's 49 that they're at less risk than someone who's at 50? And so in those discussions, what they decided to do was let school districts open up vaccine clinics for their employees. And when they do that, then they can vaccinate all employees who are there, just like we do with hospitals, where all hospitals employees get vaccinated, instead of trying to pick and choose which ones will get access to the vaccine and which ones won't. So that's something that that I think will facilitate getting the rollout out faster.
Great. Thank you for that answer. Next, we've got a comment that came in from Thomas, I believe, over YouTube, directed at Senator Liias. You co-sponsored Senate Bill 5204 to create a single-payer health system, but it never got a hearing in committee. What can we do to make that happen? A critical need, especially in a pandemic.
Yeah, we are continuing our work towards universal health care this year. The pandemic has clearly showed the need to separate healthcare coverage from where you work. There's a lot of folks that have become unemployed and still need access to healthcare. So we have bills that are progressing through the Senate right now to create a universal healthcare commission with the goal of getting a system in place by the middle of this decade. It'll take some time to assemble. We're going to need federal partnerships, since a lot of folks are covered through the Medicaid program here in Washington and through Medicare. So we want to make sure they feed into our state universal system. But rather than wait on this goal, we're also building on our state's new public option, Cascade Care, and we have legislation moving through the Senate that would pass premium subsidies, so that more people that can't quite afford the premiums in Cascade Care now would be able to get support, particularly our working families and middle-class folks who can't, it's a little bit out of reach, that they would be able to reach it. We in this state have some of the lowest uninsured rates in the country. We want to get that to zero, and we want to make sure it's affordable for everybody. And just because that one bill isn't progressing doesn't mean that we're not focused on getting universal coverage. I continue to support single payer as the best way to get there. But in the meantime, we're going to get coverage to more people as quickly as possible. And I know that the chair of the Healthcare Committee in the House, Representative Cody's been doing a lot of great work. So I don't know, Strom or Lillian, if you want to share a little bit about what you're doing in the House on healthcare coverage for folks too.
I can't speak to specifics. I know that they're working on it, and I know that for a lot of it, they're waiting to get the bills from the Senate to come over, as the Senate has taken the lead on some of the bills that you've mentioned. And I'm not sure if, Strom, if you know anything different. I honestly, I've been focused on the behavioral healthcare piece of that. And so I know that the other is in good hands, and we're excited to see what comes over from the Senate. Strom, do you have anything to add on the medical piece of that?
Yeah, I'm not serving on the healthcare committee either, but knowing that Chair Cody has been championing, healthcare for more and more people for, well, nigh on 20 years or so, and just excited to see, really to see bills like Senator Liias's bill be introduced in the first place. We've come a long way just in the time I've been in the legislature, where we're having more and more serious conversations about universal health care. I think the same is happening on the federal level. Of course, we had the champion of universal health care, one of the champions, on with us earlier. So just seeing those, they seem like incremental changes, but they mean a lot. And so I just want to thank Senator Liias for introducing that bill, and knowing that these things are going to take time, but that's a big step.
Great. Thank you for that answer. Next, we have a question from Colin. This is about Senate Bill 5226. How much support is there for the bill? And when can we expect it to move it out of committee? This is a bill related to suspensions of driver's license for traffic infractions. I think it's a Senator Solomon bill, actually.
Yes, it is offered by our neighbor to the south who shares representation of Edmonds with us. That bill, just like a couple of bills we've talked about, is now in the Senate Rules Committee. Excited to see that potentially come up for Senate action. I do just want to note, too, this question of, it's really kind of criminalizing poverty. Folks who aren't able to pay traffic tickets because they're low income losing their driver's license, having it suspended, which makes it tough then to get to work and to be able to pay off all those fines. So we want to break that cycle of poverty for folks. It doesn't mean we don't want you to pay your ticket. We do want you to pay your ticket, but there are better ways to accomplish this than by really making it tough for folks to get to work and back. I also just want to highlight in the city of Edmonds, for example, we've seen a couple of city council members, Susan Payne and Luke Distelhorst, really take the lead on trying to get the city to change how it polices in this regard to find better ways to get people to pay those tickets back without taking away that lifeline. Driver's license for most folks in our community who need a car to get around in various ways. Without that driver's license, we're really limiting people's mobility and their ability to access work and other critical services. So that bill's moving forward in the Senate, and I know that this has been a priority in the House. We've had this conversation in both the House and Senate in the past. This year, we're trying to, rather than have the conversation in both places, we're trying to tag team and split up the work. And so we look forward to taking action on this and sending something over to the House for our colleagues to work on. And feel free to ask questions about House bills. I feel sorry that you're asking about all these Senate bills. There's some great work happening in the House of Representatives, not the least of which is some of the great work led by our representatives, Peterson and Representative Ortiz-Self.
Well, and I wanted to say that the House has had, especially the last 2 years, has had a lot of conversations around this, about penalizing people in a way that keeps them from advancing. We want them to pay their tickets, but we also, if they've lost their job, they lose their car, they lose their ability to pay the ticket compounds. And what we see is that we keep them from achieving or moving forward. And that is not the intent of giving someone a ticket. It's for them to learn that, that was an infraction and not to do that again, but it's not to take away their livelihood and their property and all of that. So we feel very strongly in the House that this is something we would love to see rectified, and we're waiting for it to come over because we want to get it out. To us, it's an equity issue as well.
All right, next we have a question from, hold on one second, I had it here for a second. This is from Lisa, who's got a question about the data breach at Employment Security. So what is being done, what is being proposed to inform potential victims of the ESD data breach on what they can do to protect their financial and identity security?
Well, that's from Liza. Thank you, Liza, for the question. It's good to see you and Richard smiling faces there. I'm in that group of Washingtonians myself. Someone filed a fraudulent ESD claim on my behalf last year, like a lot of folks that had those fraudulent claims filed in their name. So my data is included in this breach. So this isn't something that just affects people out in our state. It also affects some of our lawmakers as well. We just this week in the Environment, Energy, and Technology Committee advanced legislation that would make sure that our state agencies are automatically providing credit monitoring, some of these services when these data breaches happen. We also candidly need all our state agencies to get their act together. The state auditor who lost this data was really using outdated software. And, while we're going to go through kind of whose fault was it and all that at a later date, it's clear that our state agencies need to do a better job of monitoring where our data is being held. And so that legislation would also create really a statewide office to focus on cybersecurity and make sure that all of our agencies, even folks like the auditor who are elected independently, are following best practices in this regard. I do just want to emphasize, because there's been a lot of folks upset with the Employment Security Department that it actually was not the Employment Security Department that lost this data. They've made some other mistakes along the way, but this was not their responsibility, and we want to make sure that this gets corrected. But the most important thing is to, if you have a credit monitoring service already in place through your bank or your credit card, is to put an alert on there to be careful right now. And then for those that don't have credit monitoring, we're going to be working on making sure that folks get access to that for the time being. And there's going to be more steps probably folks will need to take that were involved in this breach, but we want a good, strong statewide response to make sure that folks aren't getting taken advantage of yet again. And I know that Representative Hansen and others in the House are working on these issues. Definitely want to leave space for my friends if you want to add anything.
Well, I just wanted to say that, of course, as you can imagine, we're not only looking at Employment Security Agency, but this opens up a can of worms, right? We start looking at all state agencies and what are some potential problems we could have, and it brings everyone to a different level of alert. So we have a lot of eyes on this right now, and like Senator Liias said, what is a statewide response? How do we protect all our information across all agencies? So there's going to be a lot of work coming down the pathway on this issue.
Right, and I would just echo that the origination of this data breach actually came from the private sector. That we all remember just a couple of years ago where Equifax and Home Depot and some of these big corporations, their systems were cracked, and the bad guys that did it just kind of held on to this information until they could use it, find another access point to make some money off the deal. So we have to work with not only the state agencies, but really across the board with anybody who has our personal data. We have some really strong work being done, again, in both chambers on data privacy, which kind of works in this realm as well. And we want to make sure that Washington may be able to just lead the way in the nation when it comes to data privacy and what happens when whoever is holding on to your data does mess up and lets it out. We as citizens, as consumers, should have some sort of recourse. And so those are the conversations that are happening right now. Most of those conversations are way over my head because I'm not much of a tech guy, but really it comes down to consumer protection and what we can do as legislators to make sure our state agencies are doing the right thing, but also making sure that the private companies that have so much of our information are also held accountable if they drop the ball.
Great, thank you for that answer. Next, we are going to go to Sue, who submitted a comment through YouTube. I apologize, these are also Senate bills again, but I know they have been House bills in the past, so I'm sure our House members will be happy to comment on these. What would you speak to Senate Bill 5038 and 5078? These are the bills to prohibit open carry weapons at public protests and on the state capitol campus, and also prohibit large capacity magazines. Where are they in the process, and what are the chances of that these bills are passing this year?
Well, thank you, Sue. I will speak to Senate Bill 5078 because I'm the prime sponsor of it. It responds to the sad fact that we see mass shootings continuing in our state and around the country. Of course, our community in 2016, we saw 3 beautiful young people killed in a senseless act of violence in Mukilteo, and the perpetrator used candidly these accessories, these high capacity magazines. They're kind of the chosen accessory of mass shooters. We've seen them in Las Vegas. We've seen them in Newtown, Connecticut. We've seen them in other places around the country. And the reality is if you're a responsible gun owner who's going hunting or wants a firearm for self-defense, you don't need 100 rounds or 50 rounds or even 30 rounds to hunt or to defend your home. And so we want to follow the course of, over a dozen states that have limited access to these accessories that are really the preferred choice of mass shooters. And the bill that I have is in the Senate Rules Committee, passed out of the Law and Justice Committee here a couple weeks ago, and we're working really hard to send it over to the House of Representatives. Now, last year, the House had a similar bill, and unfortunately, our Republican colleagues offered, I think, something like 50 or 60 amendments to really filibuster that legislation. And so we're hoping that we can see action on it this year. In terms of open carry at rallies, I haven't been working as closely on that. I don't know, Strom, if you have more to say, and I know you've also been working on assault weapons ban as well. What more we can do to prevent gun violence in our communities.
Right. And yeah, thank you, Marco. And thank you for being the prime sponsor of that. I think it got up to about 99 amendments last year to really, to use the system to really halt any conversation. So we were ready to pass that off the floor of the House last year, and that's what happened. But we're super excited to have that come over from the Senate. I'm on the Civil Rights and Judiciary Committee, so those bills will come through my committee. And we've heard a couple House versions when it comes to open carry, and when it comes to really a lot of common sense gun bills, making sure that the systems we have in place for background checks make sense, that the different organizations that run background checks actually talk to each other, extreme risk protection orders, that we've kept the guns out of hands of abusers that knowingly tried to purchase guns, knowing that they were not allowed to because they had a history of spousal abuse or abuse for a loved one. So we've kept the guns out of hands of dangerous people, and I'm really proud of that. And I know Marco did a ton of work on some of these bills last year, and of course Lillian has been a champion as well, and especially dealing with gun violence and the effects of gun violence in school and on kids. I mean, Lillian, that's what you do. You talk to these kids daily, so just thank you for that. But we need to reduce gun violence in our communities, and this is a start.
Well, and I do just want to, because Representative Ortiz-Self, after that Marysville Pilchuck shooting, I know you were actually on the ground working in that community because they needed so much more help. And you're also doing so much work in the behavioral health system to help folks who might be in crisis. And usually they aren't mass shooters. Usually it's self-harm that we see and suicide. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about what we can do, not just on preventing access to firearms, but also to create robust mental health supports for folks who might be in crisis. And I know you've been doing a lot of work in that space.
Thank you. As a matter of fact, right before I came to this meeting, I was in a meeting with the speaker and the chairs of committees across spectrums looking at behavioral health bills that we have that have been introduced and are still moving in our House. And we find behavioral health bills across multiple life domains, right? So we have them in education, and we have them in healthcare, and we have them in college settings, and that's what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to look at across life domains, where do we need to put in those support systems? We can't talk about safety. We can't talk about reducing violence or shootings in schools without talking about supportive mental health services. And we know that across our communities. And so we want to make sure that we are investing the proper amount of dollars to make sure we do that outreach, that we look at everything from domestic violence to suicide attempts in our young people in our college and university settings, across the board. And so we're trying to put together a comprehensive package that looks at that and prioritizes some of the behavioral health needs we know have increased during this time. Because during this pandemic, we know that has increased exponentially. We hear about it, the amount of, right before I came to session, I was talking to a 7-year-old who was saying that they wanted to die. When a 7-year-old loses hope, we have a problem in our society. And so we need to be looking at and it has no barriers, no boundaries, no way to put anything around that other than it's from, very early age to a very elderly age. And we need to make sure that we do a comprehensive look at where the services need to be put in place.
Great, thank you for those answers. We are about out of time now, so I just wanted to thank you all for having this virtual town hall this evening. For those who submitted questions and we didn't have time to get to them tonight, I'm going to toss up some information on the screen here. You're welcome to email your lawmakers with your questions. You can also call their offices here with the phone numbers listed on the screen to submit your questions as well. Now I will turn it over to the lawmakers for some closing remarks. Senator Liias.
Well, thank you. This is such an unprecedented time. Like so many Washingtonians, we are all doing our part by practicing social distancing and avoiding gatherings. Our Senate and House are meeting in a mostly remote fashion. All of our committees are virtual, and most of our meetings in general are virtual. I'm the rare exception as the Senate Majority Floor Leader. I do go to the Capitol a few times a week for our Senate floor sessions, but it's a mostly empty Senate floor. Rather than 49 senators there doing our work, we're down to just 15 people day to day when we have our Senate sessions. So we're doing our part. We invite all of our Washingtonians to continue to battle COVID-19 by practicing social distancing. And you go to the Department of Health's website, find your phase, and get vaccinated so we can defeat COVID-19, get our economy back on track. In the meantime, your state government's going to continue to focus on getting resources out the door to support families and communities and businesses that are struggling, and to make sure that we have a strong and healthy recovery the moment that this virus has been defeated. So excited to do this, and I think this has been such a wonderful event. I'm hoping Strom and Lillian will agree to do this in a couple weeks so we can give an update on where things are at, so that we can all stay connected, and really invite your emails and your messages on social media, wherever you can find us, to share out. And with that, I'll hand it to, since I picked on Lillian last time, maybe I'll hand it off to Representative Peterson for some closing remarks.
Great, thank you, Marco. Yeah, this is kind of a crazy, weird session. Living in this virtual world, living in these little tiny boxes and talking to each other. And I think I said on the outside, it's in many ways tougher to do the work. We can't have the quick conversations. I can't run over to the Senate chambers and catch Marco in the wings and get caught up on how we can fix a bill or do something. But what this has also shown us is that we're creating better access to our government from people all across the state. We had a bill in my committee that also deals with Veterans Affairs, talking about veteran suicide. And we had veterans call from every corner of the state and share their stories about their own, back to Lillian's point just a bit ago, about their own personal suicide attempts and how they were helped by family members and loved ones to get out of that deep despair, and what they're doing to help their fellow veterans. I think if we would have met in person in a normal year, we just wouldn't have heard those stories. They would have had to drive over the passes, maybe get caught and have to take time off of work, find childcare, do whatever it is to come and visit us. So I'm hoping as we move forward and we get out of this pandemic, we all continue to wear our masks, socially distance, wash our hands, get vaccinated, that we're going to learn some of these lessons and be able to change some of our practices and find better ways to reach out to each other. In person is always the best. I miss having a close conversation with my seatmates and with my other colleagues and friends in Olympia, but we're finding ways to just like this, to reach out to communities, engage more people. That's good for us as legislators to hear more from you. Don't want to sound too corny here, but it's good for democracy when more people think that they're engaged and that their voices can be heard. So we can learn with this technology and keep doing that in the future. But until then, or once, we'll keep that going. But next year, please come down to Olympia and see us, because we really miss you. So we'll see you virtually soon, and we'll see you in person soon as well. Thank you very much.
And I just want to say that this year I have had the privilege to serve as chair of our caucus. And I cannot be prouder of our members who have worked tirelessly all 12 years. I mean, the pandemic hit last year and interim was like no other. They have been working on committees around the clock, looking at every one of these issues. I'm sure they have in the Senate as well. But I personally got to witness this in the House, and I am so proud of how hard they've worked. And our mission has been this: listen to the stories. Make sure that you are hearing from as many people as you can, and their stories are valuable. And that is what has driven us this whole time. That is, every time we meet with agencies, every time we meet around a policy issue, every time we try to prioritize issues, it is about the stories of every one of you that we hear all the time. And so I thank you for that. I thank you. We are honored to hear them, and keep them coming. Keep telling us what's happening, because that's what we build our agenda on. And every one of us have Facebook pages. If you want to hear what bills, if you want to see what bills we're dropping and where they're at, they're always up to date on our Facebook pages. So please like our Facebook pages so you can stay up to date and keep the questions and the comments and the stories coming. Thank you so much. I know I am, and we are so honored to serve all of you. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody. See you next time.